Today, we're going to clear a lot of confusion on magnesium with someone who knows supplements. We are meeting Wade Lightheart, who is the founder of the supplement company Bioptimizers. But he's so much more than a businessman. He's an author, he's a nutritionist, and a gut health expert. And he has an interesting story of his own journey from sickness to health. He's also known for an incredible accomplishment. He's a 3-time Canadian national all-natural bodybuilding champion, which he accomplished on a vegetarian diet. And he's also an advisor to the American Cancer Institute and host of the awesome podcast, Awesome Health Podcast. So he's got a ton of information that he's accumulated over the last 25 or so years. Now, Wade sounds like a guy that once he makes the decision to do something, he goes 150%. So now, without further ado, let's meet Wade Lightheart. Welcome.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm really excited to have you on the podcast because I met you last summer in LA when I unexpectedly was invited to your place. I think it was your 50th birthday with my biohacking bestie, Orshi McNaughton. And she's the one who organized the Women's Biohacking Conference. And at the time, I had no idea who you were, but I heard of Bioptimizers. In the biohacking circles, everyone's raving about your supplements and enjoys them. So it was really fun to actually put a face behind this brand. And it was really fun. And I enjoyed meeting you. And I after we had a chat, I was like, oh, you have a podcast and I got a podcast, and let's get you on to talk about your journey. And the more I dug into your story, which I would love to share, the more intriguing I was of what you do, because at first sight, I was like, oh, here's a bodybuilder, supplement company, business guy. Yeah. And it's so much deeper than that. So I'd love for you to share briefly how you got into the bodybuilding fitness space, and then eventually to this company, and how you even got here.
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention. And when I grew up in rural Canada, and when I was about 15, 3 pivotal events happened to me in life. You know, you're kind of coming into age, and it's a very interesting time, as everyone who's gone through teenage years are. And what had happened is my parents moved to an extremely rural place. It was 5 miles up a dirt road, or to my nearest neighbor. We were up on a mountain. It was a private resort. They were the caretakers for a wealthy individual. And so I wasn't happy about that. It was very rural, there's nothing going on. This is pre-internet days and things like that. Simultaneously, my sister, who was 4 years my senior, was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of cancer of the lymph nodes. And over the next 4 years, she went through a horrible situation as I watched her literally waste away until she died at the age of 22. And so that had a very impactful experience on me, in that I realized that, oh, your health isn't a guarantee and your life isn't a guarantee. And having to deal with death with someone so close to me, and all of the aspects. And I had a lot of deep conversations with my sister at that time that, you know, imparted on me maybe an experience that's not as common for people. These are conversations you have with older people, or as you expect to. And then the third thing that happened is, around the same time she got diagnosed, my sister gave me a bodybuilding magazine. Still remember the cover. It was Muscle and Fitness. It had a Mr. California, Troy Zuclato, on the cover with these 2 pretty girls in bikinis, and driven mad with testosterone at 15 years old. I thought, man, maybe if I get those muscles, I don't have any muscles, maybe I get the girl. So I bought the lie that Joe Weider was selling, the owner of the magazine. And I decided to take all my frustration and all my emotional challenges that I was just trying to, I didn't understand what trauma was. I didn't understand my experience or whatever. I just had this sense of frustration. I can't get what's going on. And I built a gym in my barn, and I just started training and reading muscle building books, because I thought that if I built this robust external physique, that I was quote unquote healthy. And I think today, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they celebrate athletes, models, Hollywood celebrities, etc., people of fame, Instagram influencers, and they assume because someone may have an attractive looking physique on the outside that that person is healthy. And, you know, so I went down that route and I started studying. I went to university, studied exercise physiology, took nutrition. And after, you know, 4 years of university, I realized I had a whole bunch of compartmentalized ideas, which served as a foundation, but it had no real methodology. There was so much conflicting information. So then I went, okay, well, that's not working. So how about I just go mentor under people who are producing the results that you wanted? So one of my early mentors was originally Arnold Schwarzenegger, because it was like, he was living the life I wanted. He had all these muscles. He lived in California. He trained at Gold's Gym. He was in the movies. I thought, hey, that's a good guy. And he said 3 things that changed my life, and it'll change anybody else's life. In his book, Education of a Bodybuilder, he says, you can achieve anything you want if you have hard work, self-discipline, and a positive attitude. Well, everybody I knew worked hard. I didn't know anybody that didn't work hard. It was a rural environment. People are living and they are working really hard. A positive attitude, I didn't even know what that was. Nobody around me had a positive attitude, the affirmative aspects of achievement. And then self-discipline. No one ever talked about self-discipline. So I began to examine these, and turned out that you would find mentors who would produce results in any field, and they had those characteristics. I went, oh, okay, I've discovered something. So I just literally went on a quest and worked through every aspect of the fitness industry, from gyms, stores. I worked in the back of the warehouses. I had a bit of an athletic career. By the way, I sucked at bodybuilding. I had no genetics for it. My parents are essentially albino Smurfs. And but I was too stupid or stubborn to quit. And I kept going and kept going and kept going. And eventually I ended up winning and went to the world championships. Simultaneously, I was a personal trainer and a nutritionist, and I got known in certain circles. I'd moved to the West Coast in Vancouver and was doing very well for myself. And it all culminated by finally getting to the Mr. Universe contest in 2003. Now, here was the piece. You know, you train your whole life. I've been 16 years of training to get there. I get to the show. I have almost no business being at the World Championships, although everybody's working hard doing stuff. You know, there's genetic factors that determine the people that get there and the people that win. But I can get to the contest. And after the show, 2 things happened. First, I had made friends with some poor Indian boys who were coming to the hotel where we were staying. And they wanted to see the bodybuilders. And they reminded me of myself when I was a young teenager, first starting out. And they had all these questions. And they couldn't afford to go to the show. So I had instructed I said, after the contest, I'll come out to where you guys are training. And every day there would be more kids coming out when I would come out of the hotel, because they're cordoned off from police and stuff. And so I'd go out and talk with them and chat with them. And then after that, after the show, I went out they took me on a taxi all through, you know, you go through Slumdog Millionaire kind of environment, and then up into this little grotto, and there was hundreds of people there to see this event. And I gave this little seminar to these people, and I realized, oh, I actually get more joy out of teaching this stuff than I ever did out of a contest stuff. So that was a light bulb. But despite the externalized success of that, after the contest, I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks. I went from Mr. Universe to Mr. Marshmallow.
That is
a lot of,
shocking.
It is. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, that something goes off in their body and they start gaining a bunch of weight, or their skin all goes sideways, or they lose all their muscle tone, or their hair starts falling out, or some kind of event happens. It's like a black hole. Like, you go across the event horizon, but you don't know that it happened, and then suddenly you can't get out of it, you know. And
well, what happened? Why did you gain so much weight and fat? And
great question. Fortunately, I met a doctor by the name of Dr. Michael O'Brien, who was probably the most vibrant senior citizen and maybe one of the healthiest people I'd ever met. He was in his late 70s. He had eyes that could look through you, had skin that shone. He was a picture of vitality and health, and he was giving a lecture series. And I'm watching this guy and he's saying a lot of things that's counter to what I learned in the externalized aspects of sports. And obviously there was something I didn't know. I had the best training advice. I had the best coaches. I had all the discipline. I had the positive attitude. I did everything I'm supposed to. And probably our listeners can relate. They're doing everything they're supposed to be doing and it's not working. And I went to him and I said, how did this happen to me? And he's like, well, you've learned to build the body from the outside in, and I'll teach you how to build the body from the inside out. And it was like a light bulb went off, because his seminars focused a lot on digestion, the microbiome, probiotics, enzymes, certain amino acids, and all these type of things. Keep in mind, no one was talking about this in 2004. And what happened is he became my de facto member, both myself and my co-founder, Matt Gallant. And we went all in. I went on a completely raw food diet. I completely did all these enzymes and probiotics, everything, rebuilt my body in 6 months, felt better than I ever had before in my life. Matt and I started a company to help other bodybuilders and athletes avoid the same problem that I had experienced. We ended up coaching about 15,000 people over the next 4 years, where we gathered essentially a large database of variances between individuals and genetics and, goals. And long story short, we figured out a model to produce outstanding health and performance. And then I made a comeback, went to the Worlds again in 2007, placed way higher than I did before, didn't have the crash. And then I was like, okay, I figured this out. So now I can look good on the outside and I can be healthy on the inside. I feel comfortable now sharing this with the world. We rebranded our company and became Bioptimizers, which is now one of the #1 biohacking companies in the world today. And we started advocating a variety of these methodologies and systems. And now we have a research lab in Bosnia that's doing cutting edge research, figuring out how the microbiome works, how it contributes to your health, the nutrients that are made, the antioxidants that are made. And it also provides insight into the individual variances and why certain people will do well on some things and while other people won't do so well on that, and why there's no one size fits all, but there are principles that you can learn to optimize your own health and biology.
Wow, what a story. And that's a journey. And I have a question though, then what was it that went wrong? It sounded like the gut microbiome was off and this doctor helped you sort it out, but was it, because when somebody may think, after training so hard, you're so strict with the diet and then you just cut loose and eat everything and let go and not train. I mean, that's what people may be thinking, but I'm guessing that's not what was happening, because you went to this doctor saying, I'm still doing all the right things, maybe not training as hard and have as strict of a diet, but something was wrong. And was it your gut microbiome that was off, that was just cascading into this fat building state?
Sure, it's both. So one of the things that needs to be clear for people is high performance training, whether that's running a marathon or, long distance running, training for an athletic event in any field, is not necessarily healthy. It requires a high degree of fitness and skill development relative to that particular sport. And at the highest levels of any sport expression, it's generally accepted that you compromise your health in order to produce that performance. It's the same thing when a woman has kids. There are certain decisions that she's made by having kids that are going to compromise her physical vitality that she needs to compensate for. If you are a businessman that is going to work 12 and 14 hours a day and travel the world and be subjected to, all these kind of social occasions where you're doing things that you maybe are not in your best health, but it's good for your business, there is a cost to that. And whatever your endeavor is. And so in my case, I went on the high performance side. Sure, I wasn't training as hard or on my diet, but there's a reason I couldn't. my body was broken. I felt terrible for the last 6 months. And it was just generally accepted that this is the normal for that side of things. Because again, it comes back to misidentifying aesthetics for health, in my case, or the ability in the NFL, for example, to run down a football field, or a gymnast in the Olympics to do all these backflips and jump around, who's, an extraordinary level of athletic coordination and aesthetics, but maybe not be very healthy in order to do that. They're very fit, and fitness is a component of health, but pushed too far, it could go way, it pushes you over the edge. And I went pushed over the edge. So part of my recovery was trying to recover from that. And the other part was my microbiome was wrecked, following the general advice in magazines and a one size fits all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then that's what took me 4 years to figure out all of the components of is exactly what went wrong, and then how to correct it, and then how to correct it in other people.
It's such a great mission that you're on to bring the truth out. And because I think you're right, so many people look at incredibly fit people, muscular, and in these magazines, and you do associate that with good health. But so often, if they were continuing on that lifestyle, because what I understand, I did the precision nutrition, sports nutrition coaching, and they taught us at the very end how to prepare somebody for bodybuilding or for a photo shoot. And they kept having these warnings, like, remember, like, this is a very temporary short thing until they win the competition or take the photo shoot. And then you bring them back down to normal things, because this is unhealthy. So they were teaching people nutrition and sports nutrition, but to, say with so many warnings that this is an unhealthy thing. That was the first time I understood how unhealthy it is to see, when you're in that sort of a state. And it's just, to be healthy, you just want to, have it very, very short. But I'm wondering, did you go too long? Were you living that lifestyle a little bit, perhaps too extended of a time?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I had the tendency just to push to the absolute end until there's nothing left. And I think that's a noble way to live one's life, certainly in the early part of life. And then as I explored Eastern philosophy, and I like things like the Buddha and Hinduism. And, the Buddha suggests the middle path, but I find it ironic that here was a guy that's decided he would sit under a Bodhi tree until he got enlightenment and stayed there for 7 years or whatever. And so it's like, that's pretty extreme. So he recommends the middle path, but he could only recommend the middle path once he went to its full extreme. And I think there's some wisdom inside of, there's also natures and tendencies, early life experiences, subconscious motivations. I've explored a lot of those things above and beyond nutrition. But at the end of the day, we try to define what it is that we want to achieve, and we try to stack as many things that support that as possible and eliminate as many things that don't. That's really what we're talking about. And so I think a lot of people get caught in the perfection. They get paralyzed by perfection. And instead of just continuing to add good things into your life, and the bad things will drop off on their own, I've found that's a more successful and middle pathway to get where you want to go.
Okay, we've totally deviated. We were supposed to talk about magnesium, and we are going to talk about it now. But I just thought your story was super interesting, and I wanted people to understand where you're coming from. And there's still so much more that you didn't talk about in terms of your spiritual side and going through your I guess it's your Buddha's journey, and it's quite fascinating. But I think we have to have another podcast for that. But I want to get straight to the magnesium part, because a lot of women in my space may associate magnesium with like relaxation. We take it before bed to have a good night's sleep or relax the muscles, but magnesium is probably for so many other things, right? So tell us what other important functions magnesium has, and then, what happens if we don't have enough, and remember to keep that woman in midlife or going through menopause in mind. That's who we're talking about.
Yeah, this is a really critical aspect for women to understand. First and foremost, magnesium, I call it the miracle mineral. It's involved in over 300 processes inside of the body. And in North America, particularly, we've been deficient in the soil of magnesium. So it's virtually impossible to acquire enough magnesium to support our lives on a virtually any diet, let alone a quote unquote healthy diet. And that's always the subject. Healthy for who, and healthy is, how do you define that? And that changes as we go through the different stages of life. And for women, particularly when they start going premenopause, menopause, and postmenopause area, there are significant things that start to happen when their hormones change. One of the big elements is the drop in bone density and muscle tissue. And that's related not just to muscles, but nervous system function. Also, bouts of anxiety or emotional dysregulation can come up. And one goes, well, oh, that's just menopause, or that's just PMS, or that's just whatever. And it's like, okay, well, that's like just throwing a blanket statement onto something without actually understanding the mechanisms that's going on. So what is the biggest threat to a woman's health? And by the way, magnesium is involved in your heart rhythm. It's involved in producing the neurochemicals in your brain, like serotonin, that makes you feel happy. It's involved in vasodilation, so the opening of the arteries for blood flow into your brain and other organs of the body. It's involved in enzymatic aspects of digestion. It is also the control mineral for bone density. And I want to talk about that specifically because this is probably the biggest challenge that women are going to face when they go through that period, is maintaining bone density, which is going to ultimately determine the quality of their life as they go past menopause. Okay. And when your hormones change, a lot of people don't realize that women have actually more testosterone than they have estrogen. This is something.
What?
Yeah, that's right. They just have.
No.
Yeah, it does. But estrogen fluctuates and rises, and estrogen is actually an anabolic agent. It actually maintains weight and stuff. So if you look at, from a bodybuilding perspective, you're like, well, what does bodybuilding have to do? You need the right balance of testosterone and estrogen in order for a person to actually build and maintain muscle mass. When a woman goes through her cycle, she has rises and drops in estrogen levels, which create the fluctuation of hormonal aspects and allows her to be pregnant or not be pregnant. Every woman kind of knows the basics of how that works and experientially what that feels like. Well, when you go through premenopause and menopause, that cycle now begins to stretch out over different times. It becomes dysregulated. And one of the ways that we regulate it, one of the things that this anabolic aspects affects is how we store and utilize minerals. Now, unfortunately, we've been told that you need to have all kinds of calcium in your diet for healthy bones, right? Healthy bones, healthy teeth, calcium in this, calcium in that. Everything is enriched with calcium. Well, calcium and magnesium operate in a 2-to-1 ratio. Okay, so it's 2 pieces of calcium for every piece of magnesium. However, if you have an overabundance of calcium, then you will start dropping your levels of calcium, which will also dump magnesium until it regulates out. Because we don't get enough magnesium, we stripped it out of our soil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, well, what does that mean for a menopausal or postmenopausal woman? Well, now she doesn't have the hormonal support that will assist in managing her minerals. Her anxiety typically starts to go up. I'm losing my feminine qualities. What is it to be a woman? I'm not as beautiful as I was before. This affects neurochemical processes. Your body starts trying to get more magnesium to make the serotonin. It can't do it. Then you're on stimulants. You're having wine with the girls, you're having extra coffees in the morning, you're getting stressed out. Maybe you're doing anti-aging treatments at the cosmetic agents. All of these are putting a drain on your magnesium levels. and they start to tank. And then you start going in, and all of a sudden you start losing bone density. And
can I ask you something? Because I just want to follow you correctly. So it sounds like the way you're describing it is that it's a bit of the stress hormones or anxiety and this menopausal transition, which I get, when you're, especially when you're 50s, you're going, okay, I'm not young, but I'm not old. So you have to, make that crossover. But it's that stress, or is it the hormone, the hormones of cortisol or adrenaline, or that is depleting the magnesium itself?
Yes, because when all of these things create a more acidic state inside the body, and then your body has to dump alkaline minerals in the blood to maintain your blood pH at about 7.365. I was 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you have very narrow fluctuations. So the more stressed or the more acidic foods and eating that you are, the more that your body is going to have to regulate. And the doctor says, oh, well, that's okay. Your body regulates it. Well, what's it regulated with? It takes minerals out of the bones in order to do that. And so now and then you might be predisposed. So there's other factors. Your genetics are going to determine how well you metabolize various foods. So I'm on a plant-based diet. My business partner is a ketogenic guy. He metabolizes fats really well. I don't do so well on him. I eat tons of carbohydrates. He can't touch carbs. He gets fat. So we run a company together, and we have completely different diet strategies because we're dietary agnostic. And today, what's great, and I'm going to give a few tests for ladies to check. Number one, they need to get their genetics test. They need to know what tendencies they have, as well as what nutrients they're going to have trouble absorbing or utilizing so that they can target their supplementation around. The next thing I would suggest is make sure they've got, and I would say, if you can, get a female medical doctor who has a background in alternative health, who can start doing their complete hormone profile so they understand the fluctuations of their hormones. Then the third thing I would ask them to do is to do a SpectraCell nutrition test. And a SpectraCell test is one where you test how much vitamins and minerals that you're able to absorb and utilize inside of the cells. So they take your blood, they spin it up, and they look at that, and they can tell how well you're actually absorbing. Because you might be taking magnesium, you might be taking a mineral, you're getting none of it and don't even know it. And so
the spectrum test tells you how much you are absorbing of each specific mineral and vitamin, or?
Yes, plus what ones you're deficient in. So how I discovered my own needs for magnesium, and virtually everything we've done in the company is because either Matt and I had a major problem that we had to figure out. And that's the interesting aspect of aging, is that you just keep coming up with a bunch more problems to solve. So I don't know, maybe that's a good thing. So anyways, I was working 3 businesses, traveling the world, running a company out of Bali, Indonesia, in North America that's really disruptive for your sleep. I was using a variety of stimulants, nootropics, caffeine in order to run things, and just being a super motivated guy. I eventually got myself where I found that I couldn't even drink coffee. It was very stressful. I did an EEG on my brain. My brain wasn't operating like it should have been. It was like an old man. And I was like, what's going on? I did a SpectraCell test like I suggested. My hormones had crashed. I did the hormone test that I told you. My hormones had crashed. I was at the low end of my testosterone levels, or right at the bottom of the barrel of what they call normal. I don't want normal ever associated with me. Thank you very much. If I look out in the world and see normal, I'm like, no, don't want that. I want exceptional. And when I did the SpectraCell test, I was really low in 2 elements: B12, not surprising being on a plant-based diet, but the other one was magnesium. And I found out through my genetics eventually that I had to take a specific type of B12 for myself because I didn't absorb the more readily available ones. So I was taking B12, but I wasn't getting it. And on the magnesium, I had a massive deficiency in magnesium. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. I get a lot of magnesium in my diet. I was taking a magnesium at the time. So I turned to my records and found Charles Poliquin, who trained Olympic gold medalists in 27 different sports. He had gold medalists in the who's who of professional sports. And when I went back to my notes, Charles had discovered that he was giving 4 different types of magnesium to his Olympic athletes to manage the stress of their training levels. And I went, bingo, here's the connection from when I was competing in 03 to when I'm a business guy, 15 years later, is when my body hits a certain level of stress threshold sustained over time, I'm dropping magnesium levels like it's going out of style, and I'm not supplementing properly to the amount of adrenaline, cortisol, and that was also suppressing my testosterone levels as well. So the hormones and the minerals were actually interrelated, as well as my lifestyle. I made some lifestyle changes. I got every single magnesium we could get on the market. Matt and I tested them using orthomolecular nutritional practices, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. We found 7 different types of magnesium that accounted for every part of the body. So when you see magnesium orotate or malate or what the heckalate, all that means is the bond that's put to the magnesium, and that's going to change the size of the molecule. And the size of that molecule is going to determine what cells that docks to and what cells it doesn't. So when you see most of the research studies, and magnesium is a very well researched and is well represented in the medical literature, what it doesn't represent is testing different types of magnesium and their effectiveness. And Charles was ahead of his time. We worked off of Charles' work, and that's how we came up with Mag Breakthrough. And it fixed my situation in a short period of time, and it's fixed tens of thousands of people around the world since that. And I didn't realize how important magnesium was. So thank God I was just too stupid to stop.
So, okay, let me recap a little bit. One of the biggest things that women need to understand when you're hitting 50 is that a deficiency in magnesium may accelerate osteoporosis, right? So Correct. We need to do that. So among many other things, happy hormones.
It's osteopenia as well, the loss of muscle tissue. So muscle tissue and bones are dynamic organisms. Bones is what creates your stem cells. It's what creates your red blood cells. So much of the regeneration aspects of living long and aging well are actually connected to our bones as well as our muscles. So our muscles are what keeps the tone in our body. They also create they're electrical generators that our nervous system is connected to that gives the organs energy. So the art of walking and contracting and flexing your muscles actually charges the organs. Minerals are the electrical transmitters of that. And magnesium is responsible for the relaxation response inside of the body, as well as the calcium magnesium channels inside the body, and calcium sodium, and these minerals interact with each other. And if they are disbalanced, then you don't have energy, you feel tired, you can't make the neurotransmitters in the same, you feel super stressed after having a coffee or watching the news because you're not able to down regulate certain feedback loops inside the body.
That's super interesting. So then we need to, especially during this transition, maybe if you're experiencing a bit more anxiety because of the loss of hormones, then magnesium is another important molecule to look at. There were 3 testing that you did also mention. You should get your DNA testing to see if you are more vulnerable to loss of or not converting magnesium as it should be. You also mentioned the spectrum test, but I missed the spectra what?
Spectra cell test.
The spectra cells test.
Yeah, and then get a good hormone test, like a Dutch test, something like that, where they can look at the interactions of your hormones, because it's not absolute. So for example, I'll give you a bodybuilder's idea. It's not just your testosterone levels, it's testosterone related to estrogen, as well as free testosterone versus bound testosterone. So you might have lots of testosterone in the body and it's bound. Same thing, there's other nuances within estrogen cycles. And when women are going through this stage, the more problems that they're experiencing is likely correlated with the available supplies to regulate the body. So hormones are like the ultimate regulators. And when they start to diminish, you're now going to your secondary stage. And this is what happens with athletes. Athletes will oftentimes use anabolic agents, and also people who are on anti-aging medicine. So all of the anti-aging management originated out of bodybuilding. Bodybuilders are the original biohackers that took it to an
Totally.
extreme. And then the anti-aging guys went, oh, wait a second, they got some of this stuff. Let's start calling it anti-aging, and the ratio of hormones and stuff. But keep in mind that hormones do some very unique things. One, they will draw the resources of their body at an excessive rate. So if you're going into anti-aging medicine, and I'm a big advocate for it, I think that you should feel as well as you should and take care of yourself. But if you haven't identified and addressed these underlying deficiencies inside of the body, when you start doing anti-aging hormone therapy without addressing them, you're going to exacerbate some problems and can run into some conditions. And I'll give you a specific example. I had a lovely client years ago, wonderful lady. Her name was Penny Perfect. And she was a super wealthy woman. She had been through a horrible divorce in her late 30s and decided that she wasn't going to take no prisoners. She built a great internet trading company before it was happened, became fabulously wealthy. She was like 6 foot tall blonde that would come in with different color nails. And she was just an awesome lady. And we were working with her, and she was right at that stage. She was just in her early 50s. She was in menopause, and she's like, I don't want to fall apart. I want to keep going. And I'd say, Penny, like, and she goes, I got this doctor. He's going to give me all these hormones, and we're just going to just keep rocking. And I said, Penny, is the doctor addressing the underlying deficiencies that we're dealing with? And she's like, what are you talking about? We just take the hormones and we're good. And I'm like, no, like, I'm concerned about it. Long story short, she looked great for 4 years before she contracted cancer and died 18 months later.
Wow.
And it was a really sad thing because she was such an awesome lady, but it was, her standards were extremely high in her life, and she was just going to get the result, and she didn't really concern herself what the underlying consequences were. And I've always used that as an item, as a reference point in my own life when I'm dealing with men and women as they go through the aging process. Don't be so desperate to reduce the trend that you accelerate something that you don't see. And we wrote a book called Sick to Superhuman. You can go to our site and get it. I got an awesome health course on our site where I write down, it's 84 days. I give it away for free. And the reason is I want people to stack the primary principles into their life that they need to consider before they go into supplementation and hormone therapy and all of these things, which I think are awesome. I'm a big advocate for all that stuff. Go for it, knock yourself out. But make sure you've got enough reserves in the tank beforehand so that you don't blow yourself out on the way. I've done it. I've been there. I've done it a couple of times. And I'm here to say, don't do that. Here's the things that you can do to avoid that. And we cover how to look at that in Sick to Superhuman and many of our podcasts and offerings, education side.
It sounds like what you're saying is you can't out supplement a poor diet and lifestyle. Is that kind of what so you're saying, get the foundation first?
Yeah.
And there was some,
say that
sorry, go ahead.
Supplement and you can't hormone your way out of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's happening right now in the biohacking world is what was happening in the early 1960s in bodybuilding. So the 1960s, the proliferation of steroids, for example, anabolic hormones, began, and here in California, it became kind of a science, and all the guys talked about it and what they were going to do. And they were taking little tiny amounts in order to augment. And, you know, the physiques looked good. They didn't seem to have too many problems from it. It seemed to be a problem. And then it just kept going more and more and more and more until now, you know, there's a dearth of pro athletes in that sport who are dying young because they've pushed the limit, they've hormonally maximized themselves, and they're sucking so many resources out of the system, whatever they're genetically predetermined to go out on. Someone it's a liver, someone it's a heart, someone, you know, it's you have to realize is your genetics are going to show which thing is most likely to blow. And by doing that, you're going to look, oh, well, if I need, like, I'll give you an example for myself. Cardiovascular disease, #1 killer in America. I've got the double bad gene for cardiovascular disease. So that means I need to manage blood sugar, and I need to not have animal proteins, or animal fats are problematic. However, one of the best ways to stabilize your blood sugar is through protein. So you'd think I should have a bodybuilder's type diet, chicken and rice, in tuna and rice and all that stuff, which I did early on, but that gave me problems at a certain stage that I needed to get out of. So it was good for looking good. It wasn't looking good from the internal side. So what I did is I went to a plant-based diet intuitively and found out that it was right for me, augmented my fats with a plant-based essential fatty acid, supplemented my diet with the minerals and vitamins that I wasn't getting from my plant-based diet. So I didn't see my genetics as a limitation. I just saw it as a signpost of what I needed to do to optimize my health. And now, when I did my genetics again a couple of years ago with a naturopathic doctor to look at what the new variances are and what they're testing for, she says, how did you figure out, I had offset literally 95% of the things I said, well, that was just through trial and error and being okay to experiment. The problem is, this is my life. This is what I do. It's what I've always done. The individual who's listening to this doesn't have that time. They need to get something now. They need to do something today. And they can't go through a bunch of variances. They can't just pick up a book and hope that's right for them. Or they can't just go to a website and because it worked for Tom, Dick, and Harry, that it's going to work for Sally. That's not necessarily the case. You need to understand your genetic individual is, what your current levels of hormones, and what your current level of vitamins and minerals inside the body. Once you address those things, now you're on the right path. Now okay, I need to work on my cardiovascular health. I need to boost up, this mineral, this vitamin, and I need to be aware that maybe I have a gene that makes deterioration of my skin, so I can work with a medical doctor on that stuff to really address my skin stuff. Someone else, it might be muscle tissue or whatever, and you'll know what those things are, so you can not waste your time.
Well, then, yeah, this is taking charge of your own health, because to expect your doctor to know how to interpret all of this and put the pieces together would be very hard to find somebody like that. And if you do, it's going to probably be a long waiting line and a very expensive bill. So most people probably wouldn't have access to that. So it sounds like they have to do the work. They have to learn, and it takes time, right? It takes years to understand your genetics and the variants, and then find a doctor who can maybe help guide you a little bit on the way. Because plenty of doctors out there, we're in this biohacking space, and I'm in, we're all pretty pro hormones. I mean, every doctor and researcher I've interviewed here is like pretty much, yeah, hormones are good. We need hormones. We don't want to deplete them. So, but no one's really talking about testing. I mean, my doctor is a functional medicine doctor, and she asked for my DNA. She wanted to see the genetics, and thank God she did. But I know a lot of doctors who don't do that either. So they just prescribe whatever, bioidenticals or not bioidenticals. I don't know what they're doing. There's all this stuff out there, because this is almost, this is almost a new territory again, because so many doctors were anti hormones because of that Women's Health Initiative study, which now has been debunked. And now we're all learning again, and there's different forms and variants. So it's interesting. And I think it's really important what you mentioned is what I'm hearing is, yeah, you got to learn this stuff and take charge of your own health, and don't expect your doctor just to solve the things. Especially, I'm so sorry about your friend Penny. This is, we don't want to go down that route. So yeah, I think that's a message we need to get to these women. So I have just a few minutes left, and I want to open the mic for questions. But before we do, there's a couple of things I want to know. Okay, let's say you figured out you're magnesium deficient, and you want to improve those markers. So the first thing, and I know you're very much of an advocate of this, is food. And if you're absorbing it, great. And then if not, maybe supplements. So let's talk about other ways. How can we increase our magnesium stores with food or lifestyle changes before we go into supplements?
Sure. So here's the foods that are rich in magnesium: avocado, nuts, almonds, cashews, Brazil, seeds, pumpkin, flax, and chia, bananas, leafy greens, tofu, legumes, and of course, my favorite, dark chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
One of the indicators that you're deficient in magnesium is that you crave chocolate.
Well,
Now,
that's all pretty much many, most of my
but
friends.
here's the ironic part. Most chocolate comes with sugar, and sugar will deplete your magnesium levels. So you're getting the chocolate, and what's the dark side of the food production industry is that many of the additives and many of the elements are designed to mimic that your body is getting an essential nutrient that it's looking for when we're eating food. And we've been told the calorie story. We've been told about protein, fats, carbohydrates. They haven't talked really that much about fiber. Oh yeah, you need it, but they don't know the role. They haven't really explained the role of fiber to people properly. And then inside of that, we have all these other elements and adjuncts, which even though we might be taking something that's good for us, we're not getting the good out of it because of these other elements which are preventing us from absorbing it. And that's why a SpectraCell test will determine what vitamins and minerals are really good. So those are the things that are great for magnesium. And I think if you go get you start getting into really good dark chocolates that you just kind of put in your mouth and melt periodic a day, that's always a great way to start. And you start to become refined in your palate and moving away from the sugars, particularly, which are extremely disruptive. Now, the thing about sugar, when you have when your serotonin levels start to drop off, okay, your body will crave sugar as well. So you crave sugar because that'll give you a quick boost, which gives you that sugar high in your brain, which offsets the depression aspect that the depressed serotonin levels are going to have. And then your microbiome gets off because it feeds the bad bacteria. Then you're dealing with yeast infections and your inflammation and bloating. When you eat, you don't know why, because you got a bacterial overgrowth. And then you take the wrong probiotic, and then you get SIBO because you took the wrong one. So there's a whole lot of things that can happen on that. We really get into the probiotic world. And we have a research facility in Croatia that I am just blown away by the things that we're learning that probiotics do. We live in a symbiotic relationship. So we're not feeding ourselves per se. We're feeding the bacteria, which are then converting our food into the nutrients, the antioxidants, making the food that we eat bioavailable so that we can utilize. And most of us in the modern world have lived in a highly antibiotic-rich environment, antibacterial everything, especially in the last couple of years. It was just out of control what was going on. And the reality is a lot of women just have such a deep dysbiosis in their guts. They can't eat a whole bunch of foods. They feel terrible on a bunch of other foods. And it's also throwing off their hormones, because your bacteria will determine their environment, and that will trigger chemicals to be released in your body to how you regulate hormones. And I was like, wow, are you kidding me? This is amazing. So we're learning stuff every day, and it's a lot of fun. And that's some of the areas that you want to check on your diet. Again, so those are the foods that are rich in magnesium. The chances that you get enough magnesium in your diet is pretty much zero. I can share with you that, because when you look at the RDA is they looked at what prevents a certain disease from happening, like rickets or beriberi, or these things that were nutritional based diseases that were so commonplace in North America and still are in many countries in the world. So they didn't talk about what's the optimal amount, what makes you feel great, And we've been on a quest that Bioptimizers, what are we looking at? How to optimize the biology. We're on a quest to determine what is the optimal amount of each vitamin and mineral, each element of hormone, each element of nutrition for the individual with their unique biological wiring, blueprint, their genetics, their hormones, their lifestyle, because all of that contributes. You got your hardware, which is their genetics, and the software is your life. And you can change the software. But if you want to change the software to get your body working the way you want, you better understand the hardware of your computer. Because if you're not, you're just throwing stuff into the computer and you don't know if it's going to work or not.
Wow. There's so much work to be done. So one thing I'd like you to clarify, because there's so many magnesium, like you said, there's citrate and glycinate and malate, all these things. we're all very confused on that. And I've tried several of your supplements, and the one I liked the most was the Magnesium Breakthrough. And what I saw when I read the label was like, there's 7 different types of magnesium, like all together. So my question is, why did you put all these together like that? And don't some of them have synergistic effects and positive or negative?
We're actually doing research right now at our lab to actually prove what people are experiencing, in that when you take a multiple of magnesiums, that they're absorbed and utilized by your blood cells much better than if you don't. And that's our initial research is already indicating that. We will be publishing stuff next year when we complete that, but the evidence is certainly supporting that. The other thing is any magnesium they take. So going back to what was our experiment. So I talked about the orthomolecular experiment. So Linus Pauling, Dr. Abram Hoffer, and Dr. David Hawkins wrote a book called Orthomolecular Psychiatry in the 1970s, which turned the entire psychological department upside down because they were treating advanced states of mental illness like schizophrenia with nutrition. And of course, that really upset the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. They were attacked viciously, and they both emerged in different things. Linus Pauling, 2-time Nobel Prize winner, and he got famous particularly around vitamin C. And so the methodology that they used for that is they would take vitamin C in increasing dosages until they experienced the runs. This is called breaking the GI barrier, because basically they were determining on an individual basis how much vitamin C that individual could absorb in a given day. That was the tolerance level. And what would happen is, if I actually have a video on this in the Awesome Health course, I call it the bucket theory of nutrition that people can go and get. It's like a 30-minute explanation. But imagine whatever nutrients you have is like a bucket. You can have a full bucket or you can have an empty bucket. Your lifestyle is like a hole in the bucket. This is how much you are burning. So when you're in the loading phase, the doctors will tell, well, actually, let me back that up. Medical established parameters, the RDA and stuff, will tell you how much to keep, how much you're burning. Like, this is the bare amount to function. What these fellows figured out in orthomolecular psychiatry is like, let's fill the bucket up. Let's fill the bucket up. And then once you have a full bucket, you only need what you're burning, but now you're operating in a full bucket. You have reserves. It's like driving with a full tank of gas instead of 1/16 of a tank of gas, where you're like, I don't know if I can make it. And if you got a full tank of gas, you don't worry about it. So you're always filling up the bucket. Oh, we're down to a quarter tank. Let's fill it back up. Let's fill it back up. So when you're in a deficient state, you have an empty bucket in that vitamin or mineral. So when we were taking magnesium, we said, okay, well, let's take as much magnesium of one magnesium that we can. And you'd get up to 2 or 3 grams and you'd break the GI barrier. Then you take the other one, you get maybe to 1.5 grams. Then you take the other one, you get to 4 grams. We realized, oh, wait a second. All magnesiums aren't absorbed the same by our digestion. And then we said, well, what if we take, 250 milligrams of this one, 250 milligrams of this one? What happens? And we started to notice that synergistically, we could tolerate more of that magnesium than if we took them individually. And so as we went through our experiments, we eventually came upon 7 of the most absorbable and utilizable magnesiums. And we took them in precise amounts, correlated with our crazy spreadsheet logic, and figured out a way to get the most amount of magnesium into the cells of your body with the minimal amount of GI disruption. So if you're really serious about magnesium, we suggest start with a capsule in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening, and then increase by 1 capsule a day until you get the runs. That's how much magnesium it takes to fill your bucket up. You dial back 2 caps. So let's say you hit at 6 caps at first. That's when you start noticing that all of a sudden I got to go to the bathroom really quickly. Great. Dial it back 2 caps. Stay at 4 caps a day until a point that you get the runs again. If you get the runs again, dial it back another cap until you're only taking a maintenance dose, and now you have a full bucket. And your SpectraCell test will demonstrate that that's accurate.
Interesting. So what does it mean? So when I started it, I took 1 capsule before I went to bed. I woke up at 2 a.m. to poo. And I never do that. I was like, what? Am I really deficient? Or that doesn't mean I'm superhuman? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, generally what happens is magnesium is often called, like you indicated earlier, the relaxation molecule. So inside your whole colon is a contracted environment. So it's smooth muscle that is run by the autonomous nervous system that allows things to transit. It contracts and moves your food from literally from your mouth to your bum. And when we have a deficiency in magnesium, what happens is we don't draw enough water into the intestinal tract. When the water fills up, then what'll happen, that triggers a tension on the muscle, and that means to extract. Most people are chronically dehydrated and chronically magnesium deficient, which makes it so they can't go to the bathroom very much. And this is another common complaint amongst women, especially when they go through menopause. I was like, I just can't go to the bathroom. I'm going twice a week. I know this is probably not good. And they really should be going every single day. Like I always say, a pound in, a pound out. Like I literally go to the bathroom as many times as I eat in a day. Just it's common. And that's what you want to be striving for. Anyone that tells you that it's normal to go to the bathroom 2 or 3 times a week, it's
No.
not normal.
No,
It's not
definitely
like
not.
you want to be. So and on that note, the one magnesium supplement that is most likely to draw water into the intestines is citrate. The challenge with citrate is that it's very easy to break the GI barrier because it tends to pull water into the stomach, so into the intestinal tract. So you want a little bit of citrate in your magnesium, but not too much. You want to make sure that you're hydrating very well in conjunction with that. And I would also suggest for most women that they really want to look at their iodine components with thyroid in their hormones, because I think a lot of women are very deficient in iodine, and iodine is what sets off there's one of my friends, Elle Russ, who wrote the paleothyroid solution. She has some great work, particularly women going around how they start gaining weight and can't manage it. And most of the doctors will not look at your thyroid properly. So if they're saying that you're low thyroid, they're not looking at it properly. And she outlines exactly what to do and exactly what tests to have. She was on my podcast as well, and I would suggest interviewing her because I think she understands a woman's needs very uniquely. And she's also a big advocate of magnesium as well.
So yeah, I'll make sure I write down. You've given us so much information, and the course that you have for free, and this, I'm going to have all of this in the show notes so that we can just have easy access. And so I'll look for that podcast of yours as well. So much stuff here. So magnesium breakthrough, that just blew my mind. One capsule. So after that, I was recommending it to anyone who's just having issues in terms of going to the toilet. It works like a charm. So, and it's not always 3 capsules. Some people are 2, some people are 3, some people are just 1 like me. So pretty powerful stuff. Now I want to open the mic because I know you have to run, and I just want to I'll have Magdalena, if you have any questions or comments. You're a supplement junkie like me, and I know you probably have something to say.
Actually, I had a question and you already answered in a way. I wanted to ask you because I take 3 different kinds. One is malate. I think it's good for the muscle. Then it's bisglycinate. I think it's good for sleeping, and L-threonate for the brain, right? And I take each of them 600 milligrams a day. And I take, like you mentioned before, one with 1 meal, another one with another meal, and so on. Is this okay? Because I was thinking maybe it's even too much and why to take all of them. But now, as I heard you, I guess it's the right thing to do, right?
It is. Yeah, I think that's a great stack. There's an interesting aspect about threonate I'll talk about, which is demonstrates a lot of going across the blood-brain barrier. The only problem is that threonate is run by a group of people that won't allow you to put the other magnesiums inside of it because of their regulatory components. So we have magnesium threonate in our sleep formula. So we have a sleep breakthrough formula that we take because it's really good for, dropping you into deep sleep. And that's a part of the formulation that we developed on that side of it. However, when you find 3 and 8 formulas, you got to put so much 3 and 8 in, you can't put the other magnesiums. So what we did is we went to sucrosomial, and sucrosomial, I think, has properties even more superior than any of the magnesiums. And each magnesium, like in that, those stacks are really good, by the way. So what you've done is spot on. So there's nothing wrong with that. And sucrosomial is a really interesting aspect of magnesium, and how it's bonded and how it's absorbed, particularly the brain. So yeah, it's
so can we be overloaded, for example?
Yeah.
What is too much to be taken daily?
Yeah, exactly. You'll get the runs. So as soon as you get the runs, you know you're at
what
tolerance.
What does it mean to get the runs? Sorry,
You get diarrhea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
That's when you know you need to titrate back. So that's,
right.
And that's, yeah, just a way to test it out. And then there's nothing, don't keep doing it. You just, the day that it happens, you go, oh, okay, it's 6 capsules and titrate
By
back
the way,
to, right?
All right. I
use
never
that
had a
formula.
problem, so it means it's
Yes,
okay,
you're
working
absorbing.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I was listening to you very carefully, and it was very interesting. I also done genetic test, Zora as well. Zora, did you did you have your consultation yet with
Yes.
Biolytica?
With True Diagnostic. Yes.
No, Biolytica.
Oh, no, not yet.
Genetic
No.
predisposition. So I was thinking, I'm quite slim and fit all of my life. I have the same weight. And I thought, many people are saying, oh, you are happy, you are slim, fit, it's your genetics. And then I found out actually through my genetic test that I have gene for obesity. And I have to be careful, they just said, don't eat carbs because carbs are just not okay for you. Don't eat sugars, it's not okay for you. So I found out many things. I was actually surprised because I'm living a healthy lifestyle. I'm not practicing carbs. I'm not eating sugars for last 20 years. I'm not drinking sweet beverages, only water and so on. I'm really living healthy lifestyle. And actually I found that because I was listening to my body, I'm following the right direction. But I would never say, the genetic test will show me this, what it was shown. I was really surprised. And I'm also very, wants to keep my form. I'm going to fitness every day for an hour or hour and a half. And this test shown that actually this is not good for my body. They told me 15 mets per week would be max for me. But 1 hour of training is already 8 mets per day. And that would mean only twice a week I could go to fitness and no walking, like 10,000 steps a day. So I was quite surprised. I said, I cannot live like that. I'm active all of my life. And then he said at the end, okay, if it's doing well for you, then you are doing a good thing. But if the tests show that your body cannot regenerate, you would just have to stop with this procedure, with these protocols. I was quite surprised because I would never say that my body is not like feeling well if exercising regularly. So what can you say about this? Because I think it's really funny that you hear somebody shouldn't exercise, like not too much, but not even, moderate way, because twice a week it's nothing for me.
Yeah, I can answer that specifically. And this is one of the things that I think the genetics tests have some strengths, but there's also some weaknesses in it. And in particular, some of the conclusions that they're coming up with are based on the algorithms that they're generating. So what typically happens with people who exercise, what they're looking at is they're plugging in all this genetics, putting it out into an algorithmic determination and saying, oh, for someone with these tendencies, you shouldn't exercise that much. Well, yeah, but the data that they're using is potentially corrupted with people who have been eating sugar their whole lives, who have been doing these things with these predispositions. And so the model is taking data that's already contaminated. And this is where you have to be able to take the information to know what are my risk factors and am I calculating properly on the risk factors. But to abandon your exercise routine, I think would be insane, to be frank. And I think
I
you
agree.
already
Thank
know
you
that.
for this. I feel better now.
Yeah. And this is the part that the data will get better over time. And one of my things that I think is really important. So if you look at look at the people who live a long time, well, there's no consistency in their exercise patterns or their dietary lifestyles. But what is important, I do believe that having a meaning in life and strong social bonds to their community where they are a valued, committed member in the community. Like I had 4 people on my street as a kid who made it to 100 years or more. In fact, one lady, she's 104 right now. And even to this day, she's got a plan for herself every day. She's making mittens for her great-great-grandkids, and she's, getting ready to go to the family event. So there's something that she's looking forward to every day. And your direction in life will set a positive cascade. And we're designed to move as bodies. We incarnated into bodies because we wanted to have a physical experience. It's like, oh, what are you going to tell me? I'm never going to have any fun. I'm never going to have any sex. I'm never going to do anything that's a little bit off the reservation or whatever. Of course I'm going to do those things. I'm a human. I want to experience the sensual side of life. I want to experience some of the crazy part of life. And I want to, have fun doing it. And I am going to take some calculated risks. And hopefully I'll survive those risks, but I'm not going to survive my life. The one thing for sure, we're going to die. Okay. So,
or maybe not.
Worried about that. The question is, how am I going to live?
Who knows? I think the doctor, what is his name? Aubrey de Grey, a few years ago that actually most probably the person is already born who will live at least 1,000 years. That was a very huge statement, but who knows?
Yeah, it's fascinating when we get into it. And one of the things that I'm very concerned about, and one of the things that we're trying to offset right now is, big pharma is entering into the genetic space.
Yeah.
And they are going to skew and interpret the data in a way that leads to their business model. And so one has to be aware of the power of the information and the power of the algorithm in the interpretation of the information. And one of the reasons why I said, hey, learn your genetics, you'll learn hormones, learning the nutritional aspects that you're done, but also check in what makes you feel good. Your feel good, and I'm not talking about feel good because I've drank 2 bottles of wine tonight and I'm feeling good. I'm talking about waking up in the morning feeling good. Am I happy? Are my relationships good? Is my body, is my health, and my friendships operating properly? What are the social components of my life that are reflecting my general state of well-being? That should be the primary determinant of your health, other than, what a medical doctor are. They're working for you, not as the dictator of your life. So you're leveraging them and their skills and abilities and expertise, but they are not an expert in your own life. Be the expert in your own life. Take everything with a grain of salt and live your best life. That's the way it is.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. Did you read about Brian Johnson, this tech guy, multimillionaire who is now investing $2 million a year?
In his health, in his body.
18 years old guy. He already reduced biological age, skin age, organ age, everything. I mean, it's very interesting. So everybody actually could do it with that amount of money. So money is the problem. I would say also it's very important to stay healthy, because you can afford healthy, really healthy food. You can afford supplements. You can afford some hobbies. You can afford to have more time to take care of yourself and so on. I mean, money is always the issue, I would say. Everybody who has it can afford for sure more.
Well, here's the great news, and you're right. When technology is rare and not attainable by most people. It's people at the high end of the market who are price insensitive that are going to get the first stuff. But as it becomes more and more popular, the price tends to go down. When I started this journey, the idea of understanding the role of your genetics was, you know, that was way out of the loop. And then when they discovered genetics, they thought that was going to be it. Well, no, they found that your genes are like the gun, but your lifestyle is the bullet. And so that became in genomics. And in other words, do I turn the death switch on or the illness switch on, or do I keep it turned off? And you turn it off by living the lifestyle that's best for your genetics, not in opposition. So whatever you get as a deal in your genetics, that's what you got. And there's opportunities as well as liabilities within it. And it's up to us to learn that.
Yeah, always up to us. And we have to be our own doctor first, I would say, not to trust blindly to the others, you know, and don't know our body at all, how it is functioning. I think if you really take care of yourself and you know what's going on with your body, do some tests, which are not really expensive and are quite normal, these blood tests and so on. I think you can do pretty well, I'm sure, because I am the product of this, and a lot of my friends, Zora and other biohackers, we are doing pretty well at our 50 plus, going towards 60. So I think everybody can, if we can do. And you said completely the same thing today.
Thank you. That was so
Thank
nice
you.
to hear. Yeah. Before we let you go, do you have any last words, Wade, for a woman in her 50s?
Yes. You need to get really serious about your health now. What you determine, particularly in that transitionary stage between, you know, menopause, premenopause to menopause or whatever, and how you address your hormones, your minerals, and your lifestyle is going to determine the quality of the life for the next 20 to 30 years. Once you go past a certain point, it's very hard to come back from. It's really difficult. So whatever time, effort, energy, money that you need to invest into it now, it's going to pay dividends over the next 20 or 30 years of life. It's absolutely worth it. Don't not take action. Take action, inform yourself, get involved with people who are producing the results you want. Find yourself a functional medicine practitioner or two. Get around other women who are doing this themselves, that they can share their unique insights, their associates, their references and stuff. There is a wonderful community out there that you can be part of that does have the answers for what you're looking for. Podcasts are out there. There is no woman on the planet that can't access the information if they decide to go out and get it. But no one's going to do it for you. No one's coming to save you. There is no, I'll do it tomorrow. Do it now, find your tribe, and live your best life.
Great words. Thank you so much. I couldn't agree with you more. If anybody wants to find out more about you, you're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You've got your Awesome Health podcast. I'll have the links to your email, to how to reach you. Is there anywhere else? Bioptimizers.com, obviously. If you want to try out supplements, you have a discount code for us, Hack My Age. And I'm not sure how much it is. I guess I'm assuming 10%. I don't know.
Yeah, 10% off the top, but if you buy larger quantities, you get bigger discounts.
Awesome. Great. One thing I would love to see in your cabinet of supplements is spermidine. It's not there yet.
Actually, I'm friends with Don Moxley, who's their biggest advocate, and I do use spermidine in my cabinet, so it's a good product.
Oh, great. Well, we'll see if hopefully Bioptimizers, I don't know, one day you'll get there, but it'd be fun to see. But I'm glad you like it too.
Yeah, you know, one of the things is there's a lot of great companies out there. Most of them have awesome founder stories, and I just advocate for them. I think that's a great product that people can use, and so go ahead and use it. And I have dozens of companies that I leverage who do the same thing. I don't need to reproduce the mousetrap. they can.
Great. All right. Well, in the meantime, we just go to bioptimizers.com and you just got so much stuff there. Magnesium Breakthrough is my favorite. So I'm glad we had this conversation on magnesium. I hope it's cleared a lot of confusion for people. And I hope to have you on again, Wade. So have a great day.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it, and have a great day yourself.